Everybody, this is Elon from the Egard podcast. I have two amazing guests today, so it's different than regular where I have one. I have two former NYPD detectives, and they're awesome. I'm going to let you guys introduce yourselves. We've had some conversations, but I'm never going to do it justice, so I'll let you guys take over and give a quick intro.
Go ahead, Dan.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm Dan Murphy. I spent 20 years with the New York City Police Department. I retired as a detective sergeant in the Joint Terrorism Task Force. I had served in units such as the Major Case Squad, the Organized Crime Investigation Division, Narcotics Division, and had a great run. Went into corporate security after that. At one point was the Chief Security Officer for U.S. Bank and all of its holdings. And I currently am co-host of the Gold Shields podcast with my former partner in crime and current partner in crime, who I will allow introduce himself.
Hello, everyone. I'm a retired NYPD detective, Tom Smith. And along with Dan, you worked in numerous departments in the NYPD. Retired out of the Joint Terrorism Task Force with Dan after serving there for 17 years. Dan and I both got in there right after 9/11. Dan retired before me. I spent 30 years in the job, which every once in a while I miss. But as one person said on one of our shows earlier, I don't miss the circus. I miss some of the clowns. So it was a good run. And now, like Dan said, we're proudly hosting Gold Shields, which is a great podcast. We love doing it, and happy to be here with you today.
All right, so for everyone watching, I always talk about supporting guys exactly like you. You guys are really heroes. I think it's important to give you guys a shout out. So I really hope everyone watching, go follow their podcast. It's awesome. And another thing I want you guys to just give a quick shout out for is any charity you support, because we do get people who watch who like to go support charities. So whatever you guys want to give a shout out to, we'll put it also in the description below.
Sure. I mean, there's a number of them. We could start out with the Concerns of Police Survivors, which I think we have in common with Egard Watches, which is a wonderful organization that helps the families and surviving members of law enforcement members who were killed in the line of duty. We also are affiliated with Wounded Blue, which is a fantastic organization run by Randy Sutton, and they do a lot of work in the area of helping members of law enforcement whose lives have been changed dramatically by injuries and illnesses caused by the job. And there's others I'll let Tom take from there, but we have found some great partners with these organizations, and we are very much committed to working with them, and we gear our podcast towards education in that area as well. Tom, what's some others we work with?
Yeah, two that jumped into my mind right away is the National Law Enforcement Officers Hall of Fame. That organization and what they're doing for law enforcement is incredible. They're really bringing out nominees who just exhibit the most heroic acts you can imagine as police officers, and they're being recognized for it on a national scale. And Dan and I are helping out with that process and being a little bit more involved with them, which they're great people. Megan Stockberger, Adam Davenport are amazing people who just put everything they have into that project. And we're very fortunate to be involved with them with the Hall of Fame. The other is a close friend of ours in Irish Angel. Amanda Coleman has a great organization called Irish Angel, which supports and brings attention to some mental illnesses that grip the law enforcement community, PTSD, just anxiety, all that. And Amanda does an amazing job with charitable events and just bringing attention to it. You could check her out on irishangel.org.
Okay, great. Yeah, we're gonna put the links down below in the description. So if you want to support these guys, that's the way to do it. Make sure you follow their podcast. I do think PTSD, especially, I've interviewed some people who brought attention to it lately and just how widely ignored it was for years. And to all the criticizers out there and all the haters who want to defund the police, you would hope that they would be the ones to also want to put money toward these things, because by their own logic, this is one of the very issues that needs to be addressed mutually from across the board. People who love police and people who hate police. PTSD is something that is definitely going on, and it's something that I hope gets more attention. So, you guys have very, very long, amazing careers, and I'm sure you have tons of crazy stories. My first question for you guys would be, I noticed the decline starting from not starting from the defund police movement, but escalating to a peak during the defund police movement. And I feel like it's gone a little bit off media since then. And people don't really know what's going on with law enforcement. We do see crime rates going up in very progressive cities, and they've continued to. But how limited do you believe police are right now in doing their jobs in places like New York, Los Angeles, and San Francisco? And
Well, if I could take the first stab at this, Tom, I think what you're seeing across the nation is something that we at various times during our careers experienced in New York City years ago, which is politics and the sentiments of leadership and city government and even a segment of the population trying to control and dictate how police officers do their job. Now, we had a break from that when we were told to go out and be cops again, and we would back you, and we did, and we took the city back. And that was under leadership of Bill Bratton, the commissioner, and his team, who were exceptional leaders and who told us, this is what we're going to do. We're going to take the city back. We're going to make it safer. We're going to save lives. But across the country, what you're seeing right now is so much scrutiny, so much funding being withheld, so much second guessing and policies that are hurting those efforts, that it's very difficult to be a cop. My heart goes out to the men and women who are doing it right now because of all that second guessing and oversight. Now, when you feel you can't do what's needed to get done to do your job, it's very disincentivizing. It kills morale. And on top of that, for what you're being paid to put yourself up to potentially be the CNN news story of the night from somebody's video camera that you had to fight somebody because they fought you. It's just a really, really bad environment. And who's hurting is people who live in areas where crime is rampant. Mm-hmm. And those people are really suffering. And it's a shame. It really is a shame. Tom, your thoughts on this? I watch it with disgust, actually.
Yeah, you know what? The worst thing that happened to law enforcement was politics got involved in it. If there's one entity in this country that politics should not get involved with, it's law enforcement, because the policies that they set forward in some of these just wild administrations and things throughout the country in certain cities affects police officers on a daily basis. You know, you watch videos, and we talk about it all the time. You watch videos of police officers getting in fights on the street, and they're not doing what they need to do to protect themselves because they're worried about the ramifications and what's going to happen to them. All they're doing, if you watch some of these videos that these people take, is they hold on to these perpetrators, hoping someone else comes, and all that does is create more injuries and more of a problem, because cops are not defending themselves, you know, and we were always taught, listen, you're not allowed to lose a fight. You know, Dan and I were both taught that in the academies when we went through it. You are not allowed to lose a fight, and you need to go home at night. And these cops today are not, they're worried about going home, but they're more worried about getting sued, getting arrested, getting in trouble than going home at night. And that's strictly and because of policies that are infecting law enforcement departments around this country.
It is so disheartening hearing this, and it's happening, but you kind of there's just such an ideological fracture in the country where people no longer care about reality; they care about their ideology, and they've been preached to that police are the bad guys. It doesn't matter if 10,000 more people die every year, so long as they vilify police and police can't do their job. That's all they want. I think it's by design. Personally, I don't think it's happenstance. I think it's intentional that's one of the first things I've always said. Police are the real barrier between order and chaos. And if you can destroy that, then you get exactly what we're seeing now, which is chaos, which is people. I just saw a video in New York where there is a lineup. We're talking about like a 30-minute lineup for people to just jump the fence to go on the subway. Because no one pays anymore because there's no consequence. Did you guys see that video? It is ridiculous.
Yeah. I haven't seen that one, but that is the prevalent mindset in New York City right now. which is that there is no repercussions. When the district attorney of Manhattan turns around and tells the public publicly, I will not be prosecuting the following crimes. It is unbelievable to think that a hand-to-hand drug sale on a corner is a non-prosecutable crime.
Mm-hmm.
What do you expect to happen? I mean, this is what decays neighborhoods. This is what destroys a city, is allowing this stuff to go on. And then you have a no bail policy. So even if I catch you with a gun, you just robbed the liquor store, you're going to be on the streets in hours. And the career criminals are just that. They are they do it full time.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a certain percentage of them that are responsible for 90% of the crime reports in cities like New York. And these are the people who are being turned out the revolving door. And if you don't think that's a recipe for disaster, just look at what's happening in the big cities, right? It's insane. I'm sorry,
Right.
Tom,
And
I stepped on.
No, not at all. And because we're talking about the same thing, we've talked about this. If you look at what's going on and just take New York City, for instance, Elon, the policies that are going on are the exact opposite of what actually worked to change the city around back in the 90s. Dan and I were both part of the NYPD when there were 3,000 homicides and 115,000 robberies in New York City. And then the right administration got in, the right police commissioner got in with his team that let police officers do their job. And where did we start? We started at the lowest level crimes, broken windows, lock up the turnstile jumpers, lock up the squeegee guys, lock up the hand-to-hand drug dealers on the corner, and the larger, more violent crimes go down because the same people are doing those. And you look at today, and the absolute, complete polar opposite is what's going on. So what do you expect to happen in these cities? Crime is going to rise and be out of control.
I remember reading a book that actually stated exactly what you guys said, that one of the most effective methods that happened during that period was that things like graffiti became things they would get you off the street for. And those same people were far more likely to also be murderers, just statistically speaking. And so even if you got them off the street for a week, right, they were off the street for a week for that other crime. It reduced crime dramatically. Nowadays, when I mention this, because people don't the term aggressive policing just means going after crimes like that. A lot of people will be like, oh my God, you're talking about arresting people for doing little things. You want people to die. You're a racist. That's the immediate response to it. It's just, again, it's incredibly disheartening how well trained people are nowadays to just hate police.
You talk about aggressive policing, and the opposite of term aggressive is passive. And passive is what you have now. If I get a call to 911, I will respond. I will do my job. I'll fill out a report. I'll go on my way. Active aggressive policing means taking the initiative, seeing something developing, stopping it while it's developing, and doing things that are constitutionally proven to be legal and authorized for police officers, such as stop, question, and frisk somebody. And when we had teams of plainclothes officers rolling around the city in unmarked, nondescript vehicles, jumping out and grabbing somebody as they were possessing a weapon illegally, or somebody was about to commit a robbery or about to shoot somebody, these things were what drove our numbers down, because the word gets out. The criminal element knows, hey, don't carry on the corner, because they'll see it. Experienced cops can tell when somebody's carrying a gun. There's a way you walk, there's a way you handle yourself, there's a way you angle your body, all of it. It jumps out to you after a while. And so what they're doing is they were doing their job aggressively, not sitting back waiting for it to happen and picking up the pieces, but stopping it. And that's what America needs. Aggressive policing is smart policing. It's not reckless or brutal. There's a difference. Aggressive simply means using the tools at your disposal in the Constitution based upon Supreme Court decisions and being able to articulate your cause for why you stopped somebody, questioned them, patted them down for your own safety, found a weapon, made the arrest. And I've gone to court and testified as to this process, and it's all legal. But they try to vilify it. They try to say stop and frisk is racist. No, it isn't. It isn't. It simply is smart and effective policing, and it saves lives.
Tom, any thoughts? Or
No, I mean that sums it up. It's when the media gets hold of, it's easy to hate the police. I remember that. It's easy. No one really contacts us, no one talks to us, no one interviews us. So it's easy to vilify us because we're just out there. And it's the videos that are out there, they can spin any way they want. Listen, there isn't an arrest, and Dan will say this for 50 years combined experience. No arrest is pretty. It's
Mm-hmm.
not. I mean, there's not
Mhm.
a fun, good looking arrest. They're all violent, they're all a fight. The majority, I should say all, but 99% of the time they are. So it's never a good optic. And it always gets spun in the direction of the cops are wrong. And that's just not the case. And Dan's so right. It's just aggressive is good policing. It's hitting an area that is a high crime area and doing what's necessary within the limits of the law to clean the city up. And there's enough laws out there that can be done.
Yeah, it's so interesting how semantics plays a role in how people determine things. There's a difference between violent policing and aggressive policing. Policing just means you're aggressive policing, like you said, just means you're actively going out trying to make a positive difference. You're not just sitting back and letting things happen, which is again, we're seeing the consequences of passive policing to the point of now citizens in New York, not law enforcement, trying to take things in their own hand, having to take things in their own hand because you have so much violence on the streets. You have Man, I watch these videos. The problem is the general public is not educated on things. They don't go out and actively look at the increase in violent crime that's taking place. There are people just being punched in the head on the subway, old women for no reason. For no reason,
Right.
they're just standing there and people think it's funny. And then they're surprised and they're outraged when a guy actively tries to protect people and ends up in the process killing someone. That is the world we're creating. We're going to create that world when we remove police from the equation.
Right.
And then people are mad about that. So it's which one do you want? Do you want
Right.
police out there doing their job and caring about you, or do you want them to sit back and say, I can't do my job. I'm going to be attacked for it anyway. I'm just going to let you do whatever you want and then leave it in the hands of the population.
It was interesting during the 90s. When I was promoted to sergeant at one point from detective, and I was assigned to the 46th precinct in the Bronx. And if anybody's listening from the 4-6, they know what I'm talking about. We used to call it the Alamo. It was a 1 square mile section of the Bronx that was incredibly busy. Lots of crime, loads of drugs, shootings, all of it. The quality of life issues at the time that were driving so much of the crime were the foundational pieces of what was wrong in those neighborhoods. You could drive down the street at night at 2 o'clock in the morning and you hear the loud radios on the corner and people are drinking and maybe smoking weed and hanging out in the corner. That's the breeding ground for the shootings, for the robberies, for the stabbings, for the felony assaults. All of that kind of stuff comes as a result of that. Kids that can't sleep at night and have to get up and go to school, people who can't sleep at night who actually work because the radios are blasting. And if you drive past it and pay no attention to it, it happens. Eventually, stuff happens on that corner. You can't put 10 people on a corner all night drinking. Half of them have guns, and something's not going to go wrong. It happens. So we had a commanding officer in my precinct who was phenomenal. He had great creative ideas. He knew what the root causes of some of this stuff was. So occasionally, as a sergeant working 4 to 12s in the evening, I would take out a team, and we had a patrol wagon. We were busy enough precinct where we had our own old school patrol wagon, paddy wagon. And the captain, the executive officer, me, and 5 or 6 cops will go out in it, and we would pull up on corners, and there would be 10 guys sitting on old milk crates. Now, those milk crates were the property of the dairy company that delivered milk to the area. So that was, we can't prove they stole it, but it's not their property. So we called the dairy company and said, do you want your crates back? Oh, yeah, they cost us a lot of money. And there's hundreds and hundreds of them sitting on the corners in the Bronx. It's their outdoor furniture. So you got the large radio blasting, you got the crates. We would pull up, they'd all jump up like this, put their hands up. We'd pick up the crates, put them in and take off. Now they have no outdoor furniture. So they move inside. So the radios get turned down. A lot of stuff stopped because of that. And it got to the point where it was funny because the dairy company had to come and pick up hundreds and hundreds of their own crates. They were happy to get them back. Less people were on the corner. If you can't sit and you have to stand all night, eventually you go inside. It's the little things. You get creative, but it's that quality of life stuff when lights are out, when street lights are broken and it's darker, it's a breeding ground for crime. When there's nobody on the subway checking when people jump the turnstile, it should be no surprise that the guy that jumps the turnstile, every fifth or 10th one of them is going to have a warrant on him, because career criminals don't respect any law.
Mm-hmm.
And so they jump the turnstile, they're wanted for something, they have a gun, they have drugs on them. And we were making all kinds of arrests like that by focusing on the quality of life stuff. And that's the stuff that really eats away at the fabric of a community, and it allows for all the rest of it.
I think that the thing that strikes me here is people would hear that story, and without the explanation, they'd be like, look at this douchebag cop trying to take away these crates just to be a douchebag. That's how people perceive things nowadays. They don't understand on any level you're actively trying to help thousands of people within a community by doing that. And so it's just an odd thing to have to be able to do a job like that. And I understand, like, I actually, just objectively speaking, if I just heard the story without your explanation, where some guy told me, it's like, yeah, the cops keep coming and taking these crates we're sitting on, right? And then the news reports it that way. And then, then it gets recycled on social media. Like, imagine a cop doing that today. They could not do that. They'd be perceived as a terrible racist human being.
Right.
There'd be some narrative around it. White evil cop comes into poor neighborhood, minority neighborhood, and takes away crates that people sit on.
Yeah.
And so they've made it physically impossible for you guys to do anything. Where do you see all this going in the coming years? You know what I mean? Like, if we keep going down this route, what is the end result?
Well, the end result's anarchy, and we hope we don't get there. They're always in history, for the most part, there is a turnaround, and because I think people in their heart is just going to have enough. There's just so much that the good citizens of cities are just going to be fed up enough to change administrations, and that's where it lies. Cities have to be run a certain way, and the leaders of those cities have to be on board with the police to change their city around. All right. So I think at some point, people are just going to have enough, and they're going to start changing the way they vote, changing the way they listen to these politicians who are out there promising the wrong things. All right. And then not being on board with protecting the citizens of their city. And that's going to change. I mean, I really believe that. And then you start to see better things happen. You get the right administration with the right police commissioner or chief involved with the right DAs, and then you let them do their job, and things will eventually happen. But people have to wake up and stop voting on just what letter is at the end of someone's name.
Yeah.
And start listening to what these people are actually putting forward of what they're going to do in your city. And for the most part, a lot of it's bad. And people have to just start listening to what's being said.
Another thing I think is something that happened in New York that was fascinating to me when I was growing up. We had a city council president who was very much a soft on crime, liberal, police are too militaristic kind of guy. And he lived in Manhattan. He had money, and he's walking with his wife in Central Park, and all of a sudden they got mugged, hit over the head. His wife's had her fur coat taken. Well, the next day in the news, you'd have thought he was the farthest right pro-police person in the world. We always used to say in New York City, a liberal is just somebody who hasn't been victimized yet. Once they're victimized, they want the cops around. All of a sudden, you realize the bubble breaks, and you realize what reality is. Reality is that if you're not safe and you don't feel safe, something has to get done. And that's what I think. I think the right people need to be victims of it. Once they see and they feel what the average person feels like riding the subway, then it becomes a different ballgame. But you're being limousined around, or you live in a different zip code and you have a lot of money, it's very easy to make decisions that affect other people, that make you feel good, or that pander to groups that you think you want support from. When in reality, you got to look out for the people, the everyday person. That's the plight,
Yep.
Right.
I think also the media and corporations and Hollywood all have to do their part and come back to kind of rational, common sense messaging, because that's what influences the population, at least a
Right.
certain perspective of it, a certain percentage of it. Because, I just notice it anytime we put out a video, anytime we do anything, there's just hate,
Mhm.
such deep-seated hate. And I'm like, this is too extreme to not be orchestrated. Like, someone got you
Right.
to this point. Um,
Mhm. Well,
and
I can
that,
tell you, Elon, one of the things that we saw in New York City has demonstrations every day. There are protests at Union Square and City Hall, and all over the city, there are protests on a daily basis from a variety of groups for a variety of reasons. And it's interesting how you can see the same people at various protests. And it's because they're paid agitators. There
Mhm.
is money that funds this stuff. So this money is coming from organizations that are funding these movements. And the movements are not pro the working person in America. They're not.
Yeah.
They're distinctly globalist. They're anti-American, anti-capitalist, whatever they are not for law and order. And unrest suits their purposes. Because when you look at how many people, I live outside Minneapolis now, you look at how many people were arrested at the George Floyd riots and protests who were not from New York. They were the ones throwing the homemade bombs and the rocks and the bricks and doing all the craziness to rile things up. These people benefit off that kind of stuff, and that needs to be investigated on a broad scale, because that is deteriorating the fabric. And there are a lot of people who legitimately want to go and protest and use their First Amendment rights of free speech and gathering, and we always protected that right. I'm all for it, but not when it goes to bricks, bombs, bullets, and destruction. Then when you see it on an organized scale like we've been seeing in this country, you're seeing a part of a bigger picture. I could not agree with you more.
And you're starting to see more and more of that come out at these protests, where people are starting to show videos of, like, this guy was at this protest, this protest, this protest, all over the
Mm-hmm.
country.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at just the Soros funded DAs and the kind of laws they're passing, and there's a lot of stuff going on there. We're coming to the end of our time for this one, but
Mm-hmm.
man, I'd love to do a longer form version of this with you guys one of these days. But
Anytime.
okay, great. Well, this was a great intro for everyone to see you guys, and yeah, maybe we can have you guys back on soon and do a longer podcast where we deep dive into some of these issues. You guys are amazing, and I really hope
We
everyone
were,
watching this, please support these guys. Please follow their podcast. They're real
well,
heroes.
thank you. Thank you so much. And if you can watch this and you can see my wrist, Tom and I are both wearing our Thin Blue Line watches, which we are proud to wear. And we're very proud of our affiliation with you, Elon, and Egard watches. And we tell everyone about it, because it's not just that you make a great watch, but you stand behind it. You give some of the proceeds to organizations that help cops. You are specifically using your marketing and your platform and your media to portray what it is that needs to be portrayed, which is truth about various topics and issues that are affecting the world. And you're bravely doing that. So we stand with you, and we're proud to call you a friend. So thank you for having us on.
Thank you guys, and we'll have you back on soon.